So the new JBL Partybox 710 is an insanely overkill speaker. But this thing sounds great, its bass creates localized earthquakes, and it has a really cool looking light feature. But today we're going to see how the Partybox 110 and Partybox 310 stacks up to the 710. Now personally, I absolutely love the 110, and I do think that the 310 is a much more sensible investment than the 710. But if you absolutely need to know how this family stacks up to one another, then just keep watching. Regarding pricing, the Partybox 710 retails for $800. The Partybox 310 now retails for $550 because before it used to retail for $500. And the Partybox 110 now retails for $400 because before it used to retail for $350. But nonetheless, all of these Partyboxers are great, and obviously the larger the speaker, the louder and more bass you're going to get. And if you want to pick any of these speakers up, they'll be linked down below. And if you want to further support the channel, check out the merch shelf down below. I've made some shirts and hoodies that look and feel great. And if you've been watching me for a while, you know I can be very particular. So I'll only set my name on something that I'm really proud of. Now, first, let's talk about the design of these speakers. All of these speakers have a mostly plastic body, which can be a scratch magnet, and they all have a metal grille on the front. Now, regarding weight, the 110 weighs in at 23 pounds, the 310 weighs in at 38.5 pounds, and the 710 weighs in at 62 pounds. Now, when it comes to portability, the 110 is easy enough to carry around, and you've got these built-in carrying handles, whereas both the 310 and 710 have built-in wheels. However, rolling the 310 around is much easier because of its telescopic handle, whereas I did find that rolling the 710 around feels a little more awkward because its carrying handle is fixed. And overall, just moving the 710 can be a two-person job sometimes. So if portability is a very big deal to you, then you definitely want to go with either the 310 or 110. Now, when it comes to durability, all of these speakers are rocking an IPX4 rating, meaning that if either of these speakers were to get splashed on, or if they were to get rained on, they should be just fine, just as long as the ports compartment on the back is sealed. But finally, I also got to point out that both the 310 and 110 have speaker stand mounts on the bottom, whereas the 710 doesn't. So with either the 310 or 110, you can always elevate them if you want. But now let's talk about the light features on these speakers, because JBL makes some very impressive looking light features. Now, the light feature on the 710 is an upgraded version of the light feature on the 110. As in, the light rings that go around the woofers are conjoined, whereas the light rings on the 310 are separated. But the 710 also has some additional elements to it, like embedded LEDs into its face, and it also has these colored light strips on either side. But nonetheless, with all of these speakers, you can control their light feature through JBL's Partybox app, and you can even customize them if you want. Just keep in mind that if you do decide to use the light features on either the 310 or 110, they are going to chew into your battery life. Now, regarding battery life, the Partybox 110 has an advertised battery life of 12 hours, but that's with the speaker playing at 20% volume, with the light feature turned off and with the bass boost feature turned off as well. And 20% volume on the Partybox 110 is good for like ambience, but real-world use with the Partybox 110 playing at 65% volume, which is good for like working out in your home gym. With the light feature turned on and with bass boost set to level 1, the Partybox 110 is good for about 8 hours of playback time. But then there's the Partybox 310, which has an advertised battery life of 18 hours, and that's with the speaker playing at 50% volume with the light feature turned off and with bass boost turned off as well. And 50% volume on the 310 is already a really good listening volume. But if you were to use the 310 at a higher volume with the light feature turned on and or with bass boost turned on, that is going to drain your battery life a little faster. However, something the 310 does have over the 110 is that it has a 12-volt charging port. So if you want, you can always get JBL's optional car charger and power the 310 with your car, which could come in handy if you plan on taking the 310 out on a camping trip with you and it dies on you. But finally, there's the 710, which unfortunately does not have a built-in battery. Now, you would be safe to assume that the 710 did have a built-in battery, just given JBL's past naming structure, because I know I did, But unfortunately, the 710 does not have a built-in battery and you can only use it while it's plugged in. But now let's talk about the ports on these speakers. Now, all of these speakers have 2/4-inch inputs, so if you want, you can plug in a pair of microphones and do karaoke. And personally, I hope you're half as good of a singer that you actually think you are for your neighbor's sake. Now, if you want, you can always go in and adjust the bass, treble, and echo of the microphone on all of these speakers. Now, just keep in mind, these EQ settings will only take into effect on the microphone itself and not your music. Now, with both the 710 and 310, you can do these microphone adjustments directly from the control panel up top. Whereas with the 110, you're going to have to go into JBL's Partybox app and change your EQ settings through there. Now, continuing on the topic of ports, all of these speakers have a USB-A port, which you can either use it to plug in a USB stick and play music off of it, or you can always plug in your own devices and charge them up. Now, personally, I think it's great and all that all of these speakers have USB-A ports, but I still really wish that these speakers had a USB-C port, which you could either use as a wired connection or use it to charge your own devices, because most phones these days now just come included with USB-C cables instead. However, all of these speakers still have your standard 3.5mm audio jack, so you can always just use a wired connection with them. And all of these speakers have a pair of audio in and audio out jacks. So if you've got a spare speaker lying around, regardless of size or brand, you can always just daisy chain them to any of these party boxes and get them to play in sync. And if you're trying to sync up more than 2 party boxes together, then you are going to want to daisy chain them up, and I'll explain exactly why in a little bit. But when it comes to Bluetooth connectivity, all of these speakers are the same. They can all be connected to 2 devices at the same time, so you can easily hot swap from one device to another, which is great if you're a power user, or this way, you and a friend can both be DJ. And when it comes to watching movies or videos on your phone, all of these speakers have 0 latency across the board, whether you're using an iPhone or an Android device. And when it comes to audio codecs, all of these speakers have support for SBC and AAC. But now let's talk about actually listening to music with these speakers. Now, all of these party boxes have the same speaker setups. They all have dual front-mode firing woofers, dual front-mode firing tweeters, and an exhaust port that shoots out the back. However, the real difference here is when it comes to wattage. Now, the 710 has an output of up to 800 watts. The 310 has an output up to 240 watts, and the 110 has an output of up to 160 watts. However, the 310 and 110 can only hit those numbers that I just mentioned when they're plugged in. When they're running off of their internal batteries, they won't get as loud. Now, all of these speakers also have a bass boost button, and you have 2 levels to choose from. Now, personally, I like to use bass boost level 1 on both the 310 and 110 at all times, but I actually found that with the 710, I don't like having bass boost turned on if you're going to use it indoors, because the bass can get very overpowering. But now, we're going to jump into the sound test. Now, just as you'd expect, all of these speakers have the same sound signatures. So, to make things more interesting, I thought that we use these speakers all under the same settings, as in, they're all playing at 44% volume, with bass boost set to level 1, and they're all running the same light feature as well. However, both the 310 and 110 are playing while unplugged.
Bittersweet and I'm walking slow. Sensitive, feel the afterglow. Looking for things that I can't control. Fear from my past, cause it always shows. Do I wanna try? Can I let it go? Running from the past, wanting to be sure. Chaos in my mind, constant deja vu. But every time it comes back to you. Oh, I'm still falling. Oh, but it tastes bittersweet. Oh, I keep on falling. Oh, I like the taste of it. Oh, our day. I'm reaching out for someone who can take away the pain of you, the things I haven't done at all. I've lost my way, but how it felt I can't recall. Do I wanna try? Can I let it go? Running from the past, wanting to be sure. Chaos in my mind, constant deja vu. But every time it comes back to you. Whoa, I'm still falling. Whoa, but it tastes bittersweet. Whoa, I keep on falling. Whoa, I like the taste of it. Whoa, I'm still falling. Whoa, but it tastes bittersweet. Whoa, I keep on falling. Whoa, I like the taste of it. I'm still falling. Whoa, but it tastes bittersweet. Whoa, I keep on falling. Whoa, I like the taste of it.
So, like you may have just heard, all of these speakers have the same sound signature. They all have strong mids so that vocals are prominent, but they also have strong bass that comes in when it has to. In general, these speakers sound good and balanced. However, the 110 is a little quicker to bring in the bass than these other two larger speakers. But for the most part, these speakers share the same sound signatures. However, when it comes to the sheer physicality of the bass on these speakers, the 710 is just in a league of its own. The 310 also has a ton of bass to it, but just not as much as the 710. And when it comes to max volume, obviously the 710 is going to get the loudest here. Now the 310 gets almost as loud as the 710 when it's plugged in, but the same amount of bass just isn't there. And when you have the 310 playing off of its internal battery, it's not going to get as loud or have as much bass. And again, with the 110, if you've got it plugged in, it does a good job of keeping up with the 310 when it's running off of its internal battery. But again, the bass just isn't there. And if you were to use it while running off of its internal battery, it's not going to get as loud or have as much bass. But with all that being said, the 110 has more than enough bass and gets more than loud enough for personal use. It's going to easily fill a large room with music, and it gets more than loud enough for an outdoor party. However, if you want more physicality in your bass and you want better battery life performance, then you can go for the 310. And then there's the 710. This thing is overkill for personal use, and I highly doubt that most people will ever have to go past 60% volume on the speaker unless you want to get a visit from the cops. And the 310 is also going to get you a visit from the cops if you use it anywhere past 70% volume. But finally, let's talk about wirelessly pairing these party boxes together. Now, all of these party boxes are using true wireless stereo, TWS, and you can pair up to 2 party boxes together. However, you can only pair a 710, 310, or 110 up to one another. None of these speakers will pair up to, let's say, a Partybox 300 or Partybox 100. Now, you can either get any 2 party boxes and wirelessly sync them up and get them to play in sync, or you can get 2 of the same party boxes and get them to play in left and right stereo mode. But the very important thing to keep in mind here is that you can only have a total of 2 party boxes wirelessly synced up. If you want to have more than 2 party boxes synced up together, like I did in my B-roll, then you're gonna have to daisy chain them up. And finally, I also got to point out that none of these party boxes will wirelessly sync up to any of JBL's smaller Party Boost speakers. So if you've got a JBL Boombox 2, an Extreme 3, a Charge 5, a JBL Flip 5, or a JBL Pulse 4, none of them will wirelessly sync up to any of these party boxes. And personally, I just really wish JBL would just bring Party Boost to their party boxes. But with all that being said, the JBL Partybox 710 is simply just overkill for personal or indoor use. However, the 710 has your classic Partybox sound signature with a whole lot of earth-shattering bass. And not to mention, the extended light feature, which features additional LEDs embedded into the face of the speaker, and the LED light strips on either side, looks very good as well. But if you do plan on constantly moving the speaker around, it can be a two-person job. Personally, I highly recommend that if you're looking for a large portable Bluetooth speaker, then you should just go with the 310. It gets more than loud enough, it also has a ton of bass, it's much easier to move around, you've got that built-in battery which lasts a good while, and there's even that 12-volt port if you want it. And then there's the 110. This thing also gets more than loud enough, and it also sounds significantly better than the JBL Boombox 2. The 110 is also the most portable speaker here, but personally, I just wish that it had a longer lasting battery life. If you made it this far, I guess you enjoyed the video, so hit the like button and get subscribed. If you want to pick any of the products up, they'll be linked down below. And if you want to further support the channel, check out the merch. I made some shirts and hoodies that look and feel great. And you know, I can be very particular, so I'll only slap my name on something that I'm really proud of.